다들이 아주 그 주저기 저지 돈에 남발랭게서 제약이 고급 중들이야. 안에 가보시라서 쉬하다 그냥 참대 배배들이야. 예, 그수주에.
I'm very happy to be together with you at this gathering that was organized by Kamadodin Kunkabling and Kagu Dodin Kunkabling, and very happy to see you all. Welcome.
얘도 예로리야. 아주 최저리야. 아주 그 로동국이 최저리야. 저 걸으세. 뒤에 최저의 춘주십시오. 최저 멤버들도 디나 성구민도 자자.
Lasso?
제가 다 라마. 뒤뒤산 냠뇽 사제 안들인데 kamba치분들이 레지.
Lasso?
다들 계시셔야 되지 중요한 거다.
Lasso?
안 간다야. 다른 미세 talk 지어스 예 거선 다이미는 talk the topic 디가레슨 topic 미세 게민도 안데 라메다 교랑 가르시나 드그레스 드레송도 다 가르시나 드그레스도 양디디즈 지신디신데 매버지
Lasso?
제가 다디 it's kind of tricky. Today in Hindustan. Okay.
In 2008, I had the opportunity to visit the actual Dharma center of Kagyu Dodin Kunkyab, and it was very crowded because I heard that not even all of the members can fit inside the Dharma center. There are so many members. And so I think Lamala gained some experience from that occasion. And this time he decided to rent a hall for the talk. And I heard that there was a talk today, but I didn't hear what the topic was. And Lamala told me there's no special topic. I could teach about whatever I wanted. I could talk about whatever I wanted. So since there's no special topic, then it becomes kind of tricky. I don't quite know what to say. I think I, the translator, don't know what to say. I might have misphrased that a little bit, but.
다디 지단도 가수래. 아니 답변을 좀 formal 가수래다지 로마 지 가수래 난취 로전 셴네 다지 챙게 망부시다에 잡지 배워대 제가 지디 formal 저 셴나 선버를 챙도
Lasso?
이내 나라시다 the person Quran formal shira means and formal shell the color of stoa
Lasso?
and drain you stand Chidangi and Yawangam Gundi Churuba and the Endaganda Chamirigan, Miss Javay, the Shadi Ore, Adanasing, Miss Tichena, and Nucholia Pug Navasangibi. That Chidang Sangi Temba. And the Nana Pur Navasangi with Temba Bengi, Nashu and Shadi Ore, and the Hindustani Gansu Nalone, Kashelia, Dende, Konda, and Javaya Summerbe, that do Shadi Ore some to Chengado, and the Hindustan D. Juzel Denem and a Narainia, Tatabadu, Chi Gegablia, Gegab Nizilia. Other Rotuyo Mane. That dinane, Americalia, that thing, that is the Sumbere. It's as a Misegi, Katre, Niegi, Samle Nalolia, Yawan, Chudupal, the energy, America. Devati Samarvadaji, Lemur Devati Sabuyevi Inzang. The Degi Gunzel Dene, Araina Yani Andu de Yonto Beruchik, Lechi, Chonwachiliang, Zidu Shuye Shuai.
Lasso? I think most of the attendees of today's talk are students of Buddhism. And therefore, I thought it would be suitable to teach on some kind of formal topic. But the challenge is that I myself am not a very formal person. So we'll see what happens with regard to that. But in general, it is wonderful to be here in the United States of America because, as you know, His Holiness the 16th Gelung Karmapa had a very strong connection with the United States of America. And I think that he was one of the earliest masters to strongly propagate the teachings of Buddha Dharma in the West. And so, furthermore, I think that there are many of the students gathered here who had a very strong connection with His Holiness the 16th Gelung Karmapa. In terms of my own travels, I've only been able to visit 2 foreign countries so far in my life, the United States, of course, being one of them. And since the United States had such a profound connection with His Holiness the 16th Gelung Karmapa, I personally regard the U.S. as a place that would be very beneficial for me to return to again and again. Sumba, right, yeah. Right, and so this, of course, being my 3rd trip to the United States.
And Pelia that the Reda Bagajo, Kanji Jonia, Daganda, G. The long, the Dongcha Ringly Summerway, the Dongcha Ringlia, and G. Che Yamlecha, some of that G. Cheshogi, G. Cashway, Lobjon Cha, some of the Masebe, Yandi Susu Gule Jarche, Susu Nijig Tsoadan Jar, and Susu Gule Jarche. The Jig Yamlecha said that Duzubang should dance. And the Jig Dakandar has a long tongue charge in the others, never. And the Indusane and Tade Julia and that long tongue charm on Buzilia, the Jig Cashway, Pumizegi, Yamle Chavatan, Dana Singi. Experience somewhere that Cheshavek and the Chedi and the Jinzabulim with Samaraya to share chair of Chipa and the Kwashigar which is the launch air that is to Zuruchilia to do something do.
In the snowy land of Tibet, the Buddha Dharma has remained for over 1,000 years. And so during the millennium and then some that the Dharma has remained in Tibet, the Dharma has been practiced in a pure and authentic way, in a way in which it wasn't just an object of study or intellectual endeavor, but in a way in which it was really applied to the hearts and minds of the people who practiced it. Many individuals practiced the Buddha Dharma with great authenticity and sincerity, fully embraced by the experience of compassion. And it was this way for over 1,000 years. And the era at which we've arrived now is one in which this tradition of Buddha Dharma, this experience of Buddha Dharma that was practiced by Tibetan people for over 1,000 years is now being shared widely throughout the world for everyone to enjoy. This is the point in time at which we have arrived now.
아직 잠니지 거를 시행 증명로
라상.
잠니지 거 아마시디 가르시에는 드그레스데 안데 지신 디시맹게는 지도아 아디 괜찮았어 안다드린도 잠니지 거를 지시해비나 증명로 삼정도스
라상.
다마시 뒤주 가서래 다들 지원면도 다 나간다 드린 아주 간지제래샤
So since I've been given free rein to choose any topic, I think that it would be good for us to discuss loving kindness and compassion.
No topic, no time. 다디 딱 안다지 최 냠는 근데 시험입니다. 최 냠는 지사디 엔지 가르쳐다 투주를 써야지다. 망부지기 formal practice 지하게 투주를 써야지. 그래서你们 지금 나눠야 당가공 같이 미냐 가조 야는 공다를 같이 있네야. 다지 투주 써야지. 냠는 지하도 지겨하래. 근데 야부시라래. 다디 디지 배터리 차지 차수 간다지 수지 니마지 나로래야 쉽지기 다 exhaustic som으로 내가 먹고 싶지제 exhaustic 갈래 쉽지가 다나 신기 지sem데 주부를 차디에 민상 난지 formal practice 제제 다 간다 아주 sem데 마지 쉬어야지당 투어야지 This chalia, formal practice chadi, I wish I used something of those. To this, so gala, to zurich, so sim. Takashurati, so relax chak. Lusim niga, relax chak, to zurich dandy, the catch of study something.
Of course, one of the ways that we practice the Dharma is in the context of formal practice. And formal practice is something that we need to make time for. We might set aside time in the morning or in the evening. But some formal practice, I think, is very good to do because it's similar to a time of day where we take to recharge our batteries. Throughout the day, we become very exhausted. We have many things to do. Our minds become quite disturbed sometimes due to all of this. And therefore, it's very helpful to set aside some time where we're only concentrating on relaxing our body and mind. This helps to pacify our mind and to tame our mind. And I think that for this reason, formal practice is very important.
다이미네야 최저 냠는 자사디 relax 차다. 다가는 신기지 술을 다 relax 하다 나는 시파 this 마지 시와를 차 대점 많이 붙여 대점도 많이 봐. 다 되네လှ버지 가서 춤대 때야지 야 아주 삼동가도 쉽게 좀 차려야
맞아.
다디 컨디션은 다디 조딩 아주기 emotionalism 다 dealing 샤스물 방아수 셈 더 녀모도 바지 녀모대야 쓰는다도 아나 녀모당 지 가르다 다 dealing 샤라나 가서래
라서?
다 대상 오늘인데 벽에도 인지시라 세처만 됐어야나 아니야 이제 당 다이네 개바스kem 다 드네주 다디 개좀 쉽차려 딜링지아디 요몬 다 이미 emotional 사디 안 삼성아도 심데 삼성아 도박하려 온데 어르서나 당 아주 녀모사디 바 라즘 주로이나 안다 아주 emotional 비바 답대버치라고 하르디 임비네다 녀모사디 페나 머리버르치미나 emotional sort of sorwan which may be chair. Maribasadi and Koran Kashwe. And so emotional ton Mariba me 다 삼성의 용어를 대 엠베는 다디 디난 include 제도에 나면 하고도 다 간다야 다 녀모려야 봐 녀모 대야서란 라도 하나 녀모의 냠도 다 가서 내가 제서 말다 디 딜리 양한 수지 년대지 삼동과디 개좀 차리기 위해서
Awesome. However, our practice shouldn't be done just for the sake of relaxing. Relaxing is, of course, one component, pacifying the mind and so forth, but we need to accomplish an aim that is superior to that. And I think that one of the aims that we also need to accomplish in this way is working with our emotions, learning to deal with our emotions, or applying an antidote to our mental afflictions. So it's interesting when we look at the terminology here. In Tibetan, you have the term nyunmong. In Sanskrit, you have the term klesha. Sometimes when we speak very loosely, we say the word emotions in English, but it might be helpful to note that that doesn't quite map on 100% to the concept we're talking about here when we say klesha, something that disturbs the mind. Because ignorance, for example, or non-awareness is considered a klesha, but we wouldn't normally speak of that as an emotion, maybe sometimes, but probably not most of the time. So it's good to just bear that in mind as we proceed through our conversations. In any case, I think that our Dharma practice must definitely serve as an antidote to the mental afflictions, and therefore working with and learning to deal with our emotions becomes an important purpose of our practice.
제자지 spiritual practice, Dharma practice 시아디, 최저 냠내 시아디, that 방법이 디사 commercial purpose somewhere. That's there is sometimes that is 가서 when dundaji weekend of the spiritual resort and the change.
Lasa?
Energy 가서 이제 쉬어가 봐 meditation chair, relax yoga chair, relax chair, and the spiritual massage 좀 당제. 르르르샤 samdangwe di this 기본으로지 루부스 대본으로지 늦지와 samdangwa
Lasa?
다이면 오늘 전에 지 최연령 지 가서 다지 오늘 제일 대자만 근데 많이 봐 디지 디스 대버지당 디 가서지 기본으로지 여행해 봐야 말았어.
Lasa?
다디 intensive exercise somewhere that's 정달 nemboshna chedachi da khashwe intensive exercise somewhere ji nangsemlia da khandra exercise achi 다디 참삼 미망고 찔려야 돼 기부 용어 말다 nemboshna 용어 말다 not easy
Lasa?
다래서나 최저 동안에 아주기 배는 곰시 닝버스 말베 다지 박샤 닝버드 좀 요아 당시 박샤 사버지 곰시 사버지 아주 녀모 발이야 곰바 닝버드 좀아 가르숑 당시 안 곰시 사버지 참바드 닌지나 가리나 다간다지 셈리야 곰바 사버지 곰지 사버지 아 김베주 최고 예비인사 다디 not easy 알하버도 지 최저하나 가셔서나 내가 가서 personal mentality somewhere 다지 미시가 거라 정신 거라 교원 동그라서 기저봐 다디 마이는 뜻가라 가버시바 다디 사지 시리 토디스 검겹 냠레체 딘데 토는 교원 조도 사지 여러다 다디 대회장 깔아 가고 싶지 파지 지다 시가 사데 단 딩에 시가라도 파지 교와 동안 매버지 당 아주 남지 당한 딩에 시가래 제가 다 덮시 미도 사람 신고 봐. 다 이민의 최초 나는 시에비민 다디 딩에 시가를 사주면 다가나 고捐도나 안디 좋아던 거지. 당 안디 소주 잡고 하루 처에 인사 다디 레나 버지 말아.
Lasa.
안디 인주스안에 디 intensive exercise somewhat 다지 시다그지 깔래 자고야지 지진서 something.
Sometimes these days, spirituality is used for commercial purposes. Sometimes we have presentations such as the chance to go to a spiritual resort for a weekend. We might do some meditation, feel very nice, do some yoga, maybe get a little massage.
Spiritual.
Yes, a spiritual massage. And you know, we use this to replenish ourselves and refresh ourselves, and it sounds very nice, but actually, there's no guarantee that true Dharma practice will necessarily feel refreshing. It actually involves some intensive exercise for our mind. In fact, sometimes Dharma practice can be rather unpleasant, uncomfortable, and not easy. The reason why this is the case is because Dharma practice involves changing our old habits and letting them go and replacing them with new habits. So in terms of old habits, we have to learn how to let go of our destructive emotions or mental afflictions, and then instill in us new habits of loving kindness, compassion, and so on, and apply effort in that. And that isn't easy. In particular, Dharma practice actually has something to do with transforming our own personal character or our own personality, our personal nature. And that can be difficult. Of course, we have the recent observations from modern science that talk about how meditation can change our brain and so forth, but I think what the Dharma is really talking about is more difficult than that. It goes to changing our character. Sometimes we might have the defense, well, I'm not going to change this because this is who I am. That's my character. So I'm not going to change that. But Dharma practice says, no, that's not tenable. That's not a tenable defense, as it were. Because if your character involves flaws that are harmful, then the Dharma says that is what needs to be transformed. That's what you need to put effort into letting go. And that's a difficult process. It's not easy, it can be intense.
드레인 주사네. 다가래. 덴덴듯이 시가서면 미전신, 다 미섬리야 요침비미나. 다 미시가서면 다 딜레 personality 딜레 요한라지. 엄마 미지 콘트사브르시미나. 제리아 지미 창심제로 차 연주산에 이거 personality 거는 요한라지. 그래서 용도 도와.
잠샘.
미 창심제 다보 콘트사보 아니 지 차도 첨부를 제비미 아예 첨부. 다 제마양 클릭클릭 그거 가셔야지. 정다름 체연주산에야 미디 우마들이 미신다를 차지.
라서?
다 간다지 미 창심제 미지 차도 준주 아니지 미야 함불 정말 다지 킹종제 드리비치 쳐도와 디차 연주산에 고랑기 미들레 교원주야를 고랑 미즈들레 교원주도와
라서?
제자 남중아 저기 마부지 까마셰리가 아래 까마스두산 레서 된 교도와 매버지 다이미는 미딩 교치비미나 에 고라 디전시 레된 교원주야지 간다르 미디 교치비나 미디 미즈데 교원주야지 제자 디게 가줄 가르쳐서나 깁홉 섬으로부터지 가줄이야 제와당 가줄 제와여지당 가줄은 뒤름이여지 벌써 땡겨요 삼정도스 간다르 수수디 수수 내법 텔레 내법 현실이야 교원주야지
라서?
예 다다미 참 미망버지기 수술이야 this magawaru chi yede bimina ane ande ji 제마양 미망고지 수술 가봐 차요. 차요. 다들 인도산 디준들네. 다들 조디 지 르린 교와 땅부디 팽개어 만다.
Lasa?
지 리슐 제 무드라 제 라면 제네 다디 다 칼라 카브와.
Lasa?
That is speech 지 mantra 네 다나 신기 가수지 compassion 지 카나마 렌자동 망부 지 셰빈 디핑거만 다 간다 조디 and similar 교와 당체 and similar 교와 당체 수수의 的人性가리에 들어야 교와 라지 근데 매수시 과지
So I think the Dharma is definitely about transforming our personality in some sense, because if we're someone who has a strong character that involves anger or lots of jealousy, then that's something that needs to be transformed by the Dharma. And later on we can become actually someone who doesn't have much anger, who is not very jealous, who is humble, and so forth. So, by changing ourselves as a person, then our life is transformed as well. In Buddhism, we talk about karma a lot, and sometimes we interpret that to mean that everything is fixed in place. We can't change anything because it's all been arranged by karma. But that's not the case. We can change our mind, we can transform our mind, transform our personality through the Dharma, and by transforming our mind and personality through the Dharma, we can change our life. So this can actually give us hope and show us that there is actually a future ahead of us full of potential, full of positive potential. For example, we might not be someone who is well liked at present, but if we transform our habits, then we can be actually someone who is liked and regarded well by others. But to get to this level or state of transformation, it's not going to benefit if we just try to change our body alone or our physical demeanor. If we just were to rely on engaging in rituals and doing mudras from a physical perspective, it would be difficult to bring a true transformation about. In the same way, it's not beneficial to just change our speech to saying mantras or uttering the word compassion over and over again and so forth. What we really need to work on is our mind. That's the main thing. Through changing our mind, we change our personality. Through changing our personality, we change our life. And that is what we should put effort toward.
다디 샘김 제아디 가수다지 냠네 제아디 가수에 다디 다기 녀모사데 지 가수에 지 텔레야 지 미튠비 쇼다 미튠비 쇼 섬르가다지 그러슬라오다 튠쇼기 다 유엔덴지 야게 동아다 미튠비 쇼기 간다라 다 방스스는 장도 간다 기겐디 줄리아 아주 마 지가주에 기겐세야 다디 개좀 차대요 다들이야 지금 요모사디 아주 지금 미디미 쇼기다 기겐 섬으로 다들이식 언디 와래 지당기 시당 섬으로 다지 다 가르슬라오 베너지 시당 사르보다 되샤사 되게 지 텔레임비네 간다라 직세나 지 positive side negative side 니가 유에서는 자도 야나 could be changed somewhere 다지 람도 케스 당아주 추저게 시에는 람게르지래 야나 직디 수술이야 탑 기업 정보입니다 내고 가수에 양지 가수에 조수 기라요 되봐 다들 집에서 용디야 다 강들이야 이내야 다다
So we could talk about the disturbing emotions or mental afflictions as adverse factors in our experience, something we need to transform or dispel. And then we could talk about positive qualities like loving kindness and compassion as harmonious factors that we need to promote and develop. But some of the emotions, such as anger, are not as one-sided. They can be spoken of sometimes to have positive aspects, negative aspects, maybe sometimes aspects that are both positive and negative, or aspects of anger that could be changed, that could be brought to the path and transformed into an assistant or support. So sometimes if we're able to skillfully relate to our emotions, we can bring them to the path and use them as supports.
Overwhelmed control cheto control cheto lamdo kiasa kala khawsharwa
Lasa.
da tros ke lamdo kiasa di ji susulia da ji kala khansang bi ji kashwe control ji ye wa thane de ji a ji min du san di ju ze den da tele ibne ya kashwe jimbe shi ma zu ya ge chi ne ane nyubati ya ge tongwa tongne yong tu ya ji ma do 당분 de yong tu ya ji this covering is something.
Lasso. However, when we speak about taking the kleshas as the path or bringing them to the path, we should know that we're talking about a different situation than being controlled by our kleshas, which is usually the way that we relate to them. Usually it's the kleshas controlling us and not us controlling the kleshas. If we're completely overwhelmed by and governed by our mental afflictions, then it's going to be very difficult for us to bring them to the path or take them as the path. So in order for us to be able to do that, we need to have some control over our kleshas, our disturbing mental events, and that is something that comes about through gradual process. It's very difficult to gain this ability from the very beginning.
That Tanayang, Pena Condor Saya Gablia, that Condor Sane and Jiwa, Masane and Jiwa, that indeed Vigi, Jesus choice Jig, that new Burbish choice, new Burbish, a Togo.
Lasso?
Sane and Jiwa, Masane and Jiwa. Madobe and Condor Lion Gablia, Rameva, Masakamen, Digi, Nedaro Chumbi, and Shirara, the new Togo, Manchesa.
Lasso? So ultimately, we have to be able to get to a place where we have the ability to relate to our anger in a way that we're not just at the whim of our own anger. So if we come to the point where we can choose between getting angry or not getting angry, then that means we've gained some ability. But if we fall into anger in a helpless way, where we don't have any choice or control whatsoever, then we still have not gained any power of our own or ability in relation to our emotions.
Cho ni ni sumar atanga zuda ji chadi je ba sa da cho ni ni sam dong ga che ga res nyomon ni mo den da
Lasso?
da dang bu de ga res na da chi da nang ge sam lu sta bi da ji da de le ya chi da di ge chi da nang sa di yang a su nam gi chi ngobodang nang sem da di gi de mane
Hola, so.
da yin da di zo de ya gen de ni ber ni chang go ar ji de yang a su nam gi ga su re chi lo ne ga da ji 네, 가지고 formal practice 망보를 제 다나시 지 참바된 지 meditation 제 다나시 지 가지고 퇴삼을 제제 리지 토안에 땅 아주지 요mol이야 님보 카데작 뉴버드디 아주주 지 가지고 뉴 collect somewhere 다지 디르비치가 아래 다디지래 다들이 니버디 가르쳐서나 니버디다 뇨모바랴 ngо시야서 뇨모바사데 근데 지바 ngо시야지랑 나나 신기 ngо시에네 다디지 가르쳐 뇨모바당 지 수수 시스템이야 distance somewhere 지 장타를 샤도야지 다디 계속 차대요 알았어
라서
계시 아주 치료하는 다지 장바든 인지라서 뭐 망보지 곰베 다지 추인도 제베비냐 낭심리야 셈다 뇨모델이야 지 가서 distance 좀 시라베브체 and 다는지 야나지 셈데 뇨모발지 kind of almost like inseparable 차 드립 차위미나 and 다는지 단 남중 아주 디스거다 revolution 좀 뇨몰이야지 가서에 다 쭉로베 삼바사난 장도 셴발로베 삼바사난 장도 다 딘지지 매비미나 다 드네 지 넘버리야 아주지 망보 셰비미나 된담 코란리야 뇨몰이야 뇨몰 조트야지다 뇨몰 뇌트야다 가끔시다래서
라서 You could say that there are two stages of relating to the kleshas or working with the kleshas. And whenever I say kleshas, for those of you who aren't familiar, we could say that means mental afflictions or disturbing emotions, destructive emotions, negative mental patterns, and so forth, is all klesha. So when we relate to the kleshas or try to transform the kleshas, there are two basic stages. We could call one an outer stage and one an inner stage. The outer stage involves the formal aspect, where we engage in meditation, we engage in the forms and following the instructions of meditation, we engage in study, as well as reflection and contemplation about the meaning of what we have been taught. And through this, we collect the methods or tools that serve as antidotes, or that will serve as antidotes to the mental afflictions. At the second stage, that's the more internal level, where we actually recognize the mental afflictions that are present in our own mind stream. Having recognized them, we can then start to set some distance between our own mind on the one hand and the mental affliction on the other hand. And it's very important to have this distance be present between our mind and the mental afflictions as a result of our practice. If we practice and practice, but still end up in a place where there's no separation between our mind and the mental afflictions at all, no distance between these two things at all, then our practice really isn't penetrating through to the key point. So to help this along, to help there to eventually, through our practice, arise a distance between our mind and the mental afflictions, we need what is called revulsion. We need some attitude of disgust or revulsion toward our mental afflictions and a desire to part from them. If we don't have that revulsion, then it's going to be difficult for us to get past the mere outer stage of just going through the forms of meditation. It will be difficult for us to arrive at the ultimate purpose of meditation in terms of parting from our mental afflictions.
mental emotion, the disturbing emotion lauda, and that telling me now, the missusulia. Chicago, Nubasation summer. Signomo, ya, the Cheshire Susuman.
Lasa.
And Dana Sing Jidang, Yomon, Tangasun, you, so Zawe, Yomon, the Shashan and Timusum Shigare. That did the Yawachan Moshayarva.
Lasa.
And the Shashan and Timusum de that Karsure. Don't see Dom, that Zawe, Yomon, and Rando, that the Dom of the Awasha. That this was sometime be now. And it's Sherandi. Jose Montreal large and the Jazadi Digi Daji Lignegi Yachon, this Calahausto.
Lasa.
That the Timusade and Timusada Karime that the Bejan and the Mangus Sheshorba.
Lasa.
Lame the Mangusunga, the inner deep and government. That is Sosulia Montreal Gidan Yamsun to school are there. Tadi yung khawshito
Lasa
musa de karin yen gocho mare de de nyambo de yu pasu ze and de ju sane di gange ta susu jesan de sha tadi nyomo de zuegi 가수에 딱 가는 라우다디 뉴버 치중 사람 장도 야나 다지 띵 섬마서 개발을 좀 하지 용대 면에서 도스 창에 도스
라서
안데 인주산에 단남지 조디 소소레 angele야 녀모 가르 슈셰르 쉐비네야 다디네 고zam네 녀보대야 이렇게 시어 다디는 녀바스게 하면 또
라서
간다량 나저기 이제 그리 아직 dealing with mental emotional somewhere that disturbing emotion the chewe qabliya 당부거란 successful 차다 걸 하셔요. 지 얘가 더야 난지.
라서
다디 인지미지 아줄이야 가수에 무투이네. 지 가수에 냠내 치약 다 저기 지 뉴버 찾고 쓰는 장도 매버 찾고 쓰는 장도 진짜기 인도 없이 거야 돼. encouragement 거야 돼. 지 저기 평가를 직터 평가 직총의 미네 아니 양결 가수래지 배는 직 평가 샤워는 단도주 제가 try you need to try 10 times
라서
10 times you lose 100 times somebody보다 내려지 근데 가수래 진짜지 거야 돼 쉽게 좀 잘해 뒀어
라서
진짜지 매비는 미망고치 당분에 다 직찬 오즈다 니숨 와 지가수래 not successful 되네 안 바지 다 참샤샤
라서
아드린 비슷한 데 매미치 그뒤네야 에너지 소소기 에 녀모베 원래 좀고 무구루 삼바르지 고구르네서 뭐다 안 사람들 좀 들으지 무구루 삼바르지 삼바르고 계속 있어
bowing down
야 bowing down 다 이랑 아주 다 다시라 주주스마다 오케이
People have different emotional makeups. So that means that what's a strong mental affliction for some person isn't necessarily going to be the strongest mental affliction for a different person. Basically, the Buddhist teachings talk about 3 poisons of the mind, pointing to the 3 root mental afflictions of desire, aggression, and bewilderment, which of course can be translated in various ways. And these 3 in turn have many subcategories in the teachings, but these 3 are kind of like the central network for all of the other disturbing emotions or mental afflictions to develop. If we look at aggression or anger in particular, we can see that it is perhaps the easiest mental affliction to recognize and also the easiest to identify as problematic. But if we look at desire, it might be a little bit difficult to recognize, more difficult to recognize, and particularly sometimes more difficult to identify as problematic in comparison with anger. And then with regard to bewilderment or ignorance, that is a mental affliction that is taught a lot about in the texts and by the great masters, but just teachings from texts and masters aren't enough. We need to recognize its presence in our own mind stream, in our own experience, and bring that into our practice. But that in turn is very difficult. It can run very deep in our mind stream. And so there's no uniformity with regard to which kleshas are the strongest in which individuals. In any case, when we set about to transform our negative emotions, it's very difficult to gain success, as it were, or to gain victory from the very beginning. And therefore, what's really important is for us to have a strong sense of resolve, have a strength of heart, and have a sense of encouragement and fortitude when we set about to work with our mind and work with our emotions, because what will inevitably happen is that we're going to experience defeat. We're going to try to relinquish our negative emotions or try to transform our mind, and we're going to fail. So we should have the attitude that if we fail 10 times, that just means we're going to try 100 more times. If we didn't give rise to that firm encouragement of ourselves in the beginning, then it might be challenging, because maybe we could take one defeat or one instance of failure, but then after 2 or 3 instances of failure, we'd be pretty much ready to give up. So having this strong resolve in the beginning and an attitude that we're not just going to completely bow down to our negative emotions is very important.
Nyomo sar this chikarawe shu the chichung do somebimina rangi ngangi chi karashure tuncho de yende samare sambe de yage yonda lela rush paji yongdo lela wandochi
라서
paji yongdo sonda 다들 당게 쉬는 시 잠니지 사대 다는 시 나도 상물을야 참바의 니지 사변스는 장도 야나 참바의 니지게다 감저디 아주 상물을야 아기류네 바지 유에돼 버지
라서
장게 땡게스 유에돼 버지 드립 차리야래 그래서 세리베지 가수에 sympathy empathy 사드지 하드웨어 지 사도와 텔레베나 지가르 지스
라서
다간다 다임비네 다디지 situation somewhere 소소게 살롱 좀베게다 쿠리오다 내단에 댄세 고 가수에 교환조예지 안 다는 신기 아주 그뒤네 지가수에 이제 지 샴페인 자왈이야 involved 시두산에 다지 아주 되지 가르 지 샤난르치 야나 risk 샤난르치 딘데르치 체체 안다 야나 진디 나라 저와 미도 삼르치 this is not my business somewhere 다 딘데르치 나라 주도 미도 삼르치 딘데지 삼르 당체 안 레라버치 딱한들 on off somewhere 소소 셈 딘데지 예비미네 디디 off 치샤요 버치 원드라요 버치 딘데 차리요래 그래서 디 준제데네 아주기 잠니지 미버디 사변 여버디 간데스 야게 당고요 간데스 제제 님 바디 또슈로디 님도 학생분 미버 컨트롤 동고요 다디 아주기 가지고 삼도하데 계시면 차대요
라서 So when the force of our mental afflictions does begin to lessen, then it becomes easier and easier for the positive qualities of our mind to flourish. So when we talk about loving kindness and compassion, these are qualities that all of us have in our minds already present from the time of our birth. We all have these qualities innately. Science these days tells us that our brains are hardwired for positive emotions such as sympathy, empathy, and so forth. But we get into different situations, such as the conditions in which we were raised, the environment in which we were raised, and things change. And another thing that can serve as an obstacle to the development of our loving kindness and compassion is sometimes we're afraid of trying to help others. We might initially have a wish to try and help others, but then hesitate because we think there's too much risk if we actually try to engage in helping others. Or we say to ourselves, this is none of my business, so therefore I'm just going to disengage. So sometimes it's as if there were an on-off switch to the loving kindness and compassion in our heart, and we choose to leave it on the off setting. Therefore, contemplating to ourselves about how we can further empower the loving kindness and compassion that is already present within ourselves, further energize the pure intention that we possess, is very important.
다드네 다드시라 두주시라 맵자 아드린 주산에 디 미신다가 동해를 understanding 지하당 디지 가수에 텔레야 다가수에 샤차웨기 삼바자마 힘바 저니 안에 간다 동해에 심제 사람장도 아나 다가다 심지 버리부디 지 차셰 교르제 나 드리지가 동안에 간다를 지 자와 수면로지 이는 배아로도 드지 버지 고가래 드리지 요머체 다들 인주산다 대야 안텐제베기 니지 대야 되네 지 가수에 디도 소화에 버서머베 심지어 탐제리야 안든데비다 동해쟁 심지어 탐제리야 안든지 가르에 공부하디 다 개좀 쉽차리 얼바 라서 인비스탄 디규제 되네 다들 메신도 어디 야겐 로가데 수수생기 이버도 메신이 야겐 로가도 신세 다들에 다 두주시라면인데 온주 롱지 내려치스데 송도 제가 온주 롱딘도잉
It seems that we're running out of time for our session together. So the main point that I wanted to make about compassion is that compassion is a little bit more than just sympathy or even just empathy. It's something that entails more dedication and a heart that entails more involvement in action. So compassion isn't just the mind or heart that understands or feels for the suffering of others or has warm sentiments toward others. Rather, compassion is the mind that realizes that the sufferings of others are actually a part of oneself. And within that attitude, the heart that bears unbearable love for sentient beings. So, therefore, to meditate on compassion is to further cultivate and nurture this awareness that one's happiness and suffering is the happiness and suffering of all sentient beings. The happiness and suffering of all sentient beings is the happiness and suffering of oneself. And when we meditate in this way, our compassion will increase, and it will increase step by step in gradual stages. So that is what I'd like to say about compassion for this morning. And additionally, I've been requested to give a lung, or a scriptural transmission, for the text that I composed on the preliminary practices, brief recitations for the 4 preliminary practices. So I will recite this scriptural transmission now.
지린다 자와싱이 되되는 루니지다라 되나는 쳔데데도 라면 속에 원전이 되는 상황이 되는 장라리도 코저기도 개고 지나면 말은 지지 좀 다스면서 라면 지어서 좀 상황이 좀 치료를 미거든이 이모들 심게 자와서 이모지 봐 상계는 주셔서 좀 소리는 이제 저도 무슨 그런 데는 무슨 전부도 라바지는 저는 많이 경영 원하는 담지 다는데 이버디서 다녀만 다녀서 말은 예배서 라면 뭐지 그래서 디제다 버저 도서 오늘이 다보다랑 좀 라면 이버도 지로서 또 그런다 예라오는 하는 집에서 하면 그래서 장게 정보는 맞으려는 나도 오늘제는 뭐지라서도 좀 한번 봐보자 탐지기에서 하는 것도 너무 니도 레벨이 돌리면 영어에서 저도 도전 넘어다 이제 요라는 냠브샤 이번에 녀만 나도 이제 샤마도 잡아서 처음에 지명하는 심정가도 다음으로 디버지면 더좀 이제 저도 메르죠는 신조르 교르는 어제 저번에 가면 메르지가 알고 저번에 그래서 배만이 되는 것을 하면 되는 미선 예상이 겹도 주는 그런 다들 추기 완 저는 되는 오미지에 도전이 오늘 아주 좀 받으면 이제 보고 좀 아주 되는 여전히 나오는 진리 주변에서 주변으로 사실은 로나제도 막고는 막하는 면제되고 잡아나 나버서 마셔도 조금 라도이게 좋아봐 고좀 라마도 고좀 다음에 이거는 질문료도 주고 라면 예 한번 튜민데 튜모니인데 치마도 오는 이름 라 이름 결라면 주변만이 되는 자야는 도 참 뭔가 좀 야라디바고 만나온 집에서 라면서 만나온 라면 라면 구시마다 라마르 되게 베지를 뭐 더베지 좀 들고 베지 뭐 그래서 파워지도 많이 거를 이제 좀 명월에서 저거 다다니는 거죠. 미션으로 되도록 이제 인지를 가지 시행해서 남아도 잘하고 이거 이제서 그러면 거기서 좀 더 많이 또 그쪽은 다 보듯이 라메 고선도랑 루마이즈 예매도 교블었으면 샤고 이번 질람도 라메 나와도 기도 담저 라메 우리도 제시바랑 되면 뭐 도지를 좀 뭐래서 미놈 교와서 라메니 저 자오 춘대랑 저걸 제시 망하면 원래 망하다 그럼 이들 되게 수라가 주둥이에 와서 그걸 좀 버자고 다들 안타리디 샌프란시스코 야 다들이 대 가수에 티니버데 요아 좀데 가우샤 좀 생각 상만 도도 시라 가우죠 안다리 아미르리아 티 수바용베 걸리아 안 다와니 기질이야 가수에지 규주 다들 봐서 좋아하기 고급으로도 충분해 다디 고급디 다 팅당부를 차리야래 지계급 나눠려야 이제 규주 정부직 나눠려야 봐서 좋아 고급 정부 팅당부를 차리야래 다디 딜레라버지요 다들 고급타들 아버지 말해 강수디 신만 마체 지제는 신도 하고 말해 다디 아주 하고 모른다 레라고 요 말해 안데 인주스탄에 다들 이제 레마 다 주주 정부직 나눠려야 아니 고고네 이제다 주주 가져다 고급 정부디 대지 가수에 가보시라 좀송스 내주사 마음발이미냐 강아지 체드 예 뒤즈 만지 당 투서를 섬섬지 나들이지 자와당 안 다는 신기도 이제를 전부 다 해요.
Lasso? I'm so happy to be visiting San Francisco for the second time and very happy to see you all. And this is my third visit to the United States, but the first time, really, that I have had the opportunity to have such an extended visit. So this time I have the chance to be here for 2 months and visit various places. I'm very happy to have this opportunity, and it hasn't been an easy one to receive. I don't know if you're aware of how difficult such an opportunity is to receive, but it hasn't been easy. Something I've waited for quite a while, and therefore I'm very happy that it has come to pass, that I'm able to visit the United States for an extended period of time. And my hope and prayer and aspiration in the future is that I will be able to come back again and again for the benefit of yourselves in a similar way.
di nalo le t-shirt ngarang ta na si chengye ta de ga sana di chuje yong ga gyumsen ru zo ji di ane kada ji chi ge ge nalo ya yue be ta kanda ko ka shwe ta loma sen zhe min ta ngarang loma ru ji na ru she min do ngarang lama ina she min do loma yue na ja she min do de yin san da 안달 치 예금 나로려야지 가트 다 정부망 버스 도시하래 레인주산에 엔티지 대주다 투제 치아기 다 고급디 마종이메레 레인주산다 야갈래야 신시다 야가랑 루메나로려야 바지 친시 아니 비게지 로도 총이미나 아니 지 예금 가려야 예배 정보소리야 투야기 고급 망아 용거를 삼버지 나사 니지 자와를 신부 기업체다 용물에 다 이미네 다디 야갈 레벨 젤이네 때 레라우지 중요하면 다디 다디 lots of challenges 말바다지 hardships 말바다지 가는 방법이 규지도 충분해 다 간다야 안 다대 차림이네 다 데지 구양을 데지 구양을 조여야 지당 아니 라와 this cher roye dus number dus yonde ye in dustane and lojenge ngita jawasan rando melam sanan rando that the drubyak tanya dus that drubyalia and kandar ichi cher ro dus cha ye in dustane da ngaran kawsha chos
It's been more than 15 years now since I escaped Tibet and left for India. And when I did that, I left a note on my table in Tibet, and I wrote the reason for my leaving Tibet in that letter, but I also remember what I wrote so that I can tell you. The main reason why I left Tibet was because I wasn't receiving the opportunity to meet with the many friends I have in foreign countries. Now, you could say that I couldn't meet with the many disciples that I have in foreign countries, but I don't feel so certain that I have many disciples. Can you?
No, it's okay.
Okay. So I don't know whether to call them disciples or friends. But in any case, I wasn't getting the opportunity to meet them. And my thought at that time was, if I could go to the noble land of India, which is a free country, then I would have many more opportunities to see my friends throughout the world. But after I arrived in India, it didn't work out in exactly the way I had hoped. There were lots of challenges and a lot of hardships. It wasn't easy to just automatically go and travel throughout the world and meet all my friends throughout the world. So that continued along that way for some time, but now it looks like things are opening up a little bit. It seems that there might be some more freedoms opening up. And I really feel that maybe now I'm getting closer to fulfilling my hopes and aspirations that I had made 15 years ago. So I have great trust in this.
아니 딱 간다. 녜미스 때 가서 디스 가서 가다다 로 듀네 레벨 가려 루르다 까마바레스 지루체
Lassa?
저리게요.
Lassa?
아니 다드네 지 드네 로지시 가려야 간다 죄죄지 다 간다 드르 제제 충분해 제산도 미진나로래야 지 요아 다 챌린지 방법을 충분해 요아 먹을 충분해 제산 다디 요아 충분히 얘기 가수라다지 out of my control somewhere that the 요아 동도 유연해 요아 신입이 게 말해 나가는 도시체 다 이미네한테 요아 신부 되게 나 미망고질이야 가수라다지 가수의 펜터 용배다 저어르체 도 충분해 인도산에 배나 드린도 차셔빈데 가서 미망고질이야 용세 영어서 뭐 투야당 이 가수로 이미네 데스 가수의지 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 가보요하다 다나 신기 셈리아 디기요하르 기 디기요하게 가수다 튠겐 좀세지 조토스 삼르 두스탱도 네인두산 다디 통윤두산다 오망아즈지 가수에 땡게 미지나로리 요망고 심비티 다 저것도 상상없이 다 가수의지 even though out of my control but they serve good purpose some other things that they understand 간다야 그냥 상으로 돼 영대 가보시다 조슈아이 아마 오시다 슈아메 도시
Lassa? When I was 7 years old, I was recognized as the Karmapa, but I had no plans for this to happen. I had no preparations for this. When I was 14, I left Tibet and came to India and have gone through many challenges that entailed. So I've gone through lots of big changes in my life, and many of them have been out of my control. But nevertheless, I think that these changes can serve a good purpose. For example, I've had the opportunity to be together with you here today, and I really feel that this opportunity for us to be together today may provide you with some small condition to further increase your own joy, happiness, and well-being. And therefore, even though there have been great changes and challenges in my life, they are not for no purpose. They can be put to a good purpose and become useful. So again, I'm so happy to see you all, and thank you very much.
Thank you.